Very good.
They're really excited about the idea.
Okay.
But the first question I wanted to ask was about your thoughts on Chuck Darrell's comments today. He's at one point said that Americans had been bamboozled, that there's a revisionist notion that the separation of church and state exists, that that's really a lie. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree that the notion of church and state means that people can't bring their faith into the public square is absolutely revisionist, absolutely wrong. Fact is that many of the great movements in our history for justice, going back to abolishing slavery and through the civil rights movement, would have never have happened if leaders inspired by their faith hadn't stood up. In Dr. Martin Luther King, you read letters from a Birmingham prison, and it's imbued with his faith. He's quoting Paul, he's quoting Aquinas, and so it's clear that religious motivations or religious thought doesn't somehow bar people from being involved in public policy debates.
But was Martin Luther King a state official? A legislator, an elected official, a judge?
Well, William Wilberforce was a member of Parliament.
You quoted Dr. King, and I'm just curious how that's relevant to the separation of church and state argument, because he was actually a reverend.
Well, it's absolutely, because the argument being made about separation of church and state, and being made by many, is that somehow moral arguments don't have a place in the public square. It doesn't mean that only officials, whether elected officials or judges, shouldn't have moral concerns and act on them. It basically is saying that people that have churches like this should keep their faith within the four walls of the church and not bring it into the public square. So it directly contradicts the notion of separation of church and state, which says that somehow moral or religious arguments don't have a place in the public square.
Okay, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that moral or religious arguments definitely have a place. But we're
agreed about something.
Yeah, we agree about something, but where's the separation of church and state?
Well, the separation of church and state is not within the Constitution. It was a letter from Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptist Association, which first used the term separation of church and state. Now, the Supreme Court has taken that letter and used that in interpreting the distinction, but the notion that the word separation of church and state, no, I definitely agree that the First Amendment talks a lot about, there's basically a protection for religious liberty, and there's the Establishment Clause. There's no established church on the federal level in the United States.
So why do churches have tax-exempt status if there's no separation of church and state?
Well, the tax-exempt status of churches is actually a relatively recent phenomenon. It's because of the great good that churches do for society. And
it's not at all related to their ability to partake in political or state activities in that way?
Well, the fact that some people, especially after Prop 8, had this notion that you're going to start taxing the churches because they spoke up on a lobbying matter, I think is another example of a false notion of separation of church and state. Of course a church can get its tax-exempt status and still speak up on an issue like Proposition 8. And churches did on both sides. I mean, the Episcopal Church in LA was very active in supporting redefining marriage and opposing Prop 8, and there were churches that supported Prop 8 that got involved. The notion that somehow you would strip them of their tax-exempt status is, to me, just religious bigotry.
But you don't think that biblical law should govern the United States?
I don't know. Have we ever said anything like this in any of our speeches?
Well,
have I ever said anything like that?
I'm asking you the question. I'm sort of inquiring because I feel like a lot of people have said that this is a Christian nation. Mm-hmm. We've heard that several times today, right? Yeah. So, I think it sort of leads to the question of whether Christian law should be enacted as the laws of the United States.
Well, the laws of the U.S. based upon the Constitution, there's a profound respect for religious belief. Obviously, you have John Adams saying our Constitution was made for our moral and religious people, and it will do it for no other. In quote after quote, our founding fathers respected the role of religion in the public square. But again, I agree that you shouldn't have one church or one nation dictating what the law of the United States is, and that's why we have the Establishment Clause.
Okay. And so you would have a problem with like the Muslim religion sort of dictating what the laws are in this country?
Well, any particular denomination or faith dictating what the laws are, as far as the organization dictating what the laws are, is of course wrong. But Muslims or anyone else voting for laws is what this country is about. Everyone has the right to vote, and so there's a false understanding if you say that somehow because Muslims or members of the Christian community or any community decided to give money or vote for a particular cause, that somehow they weren't allowed to do that. That's completely wrong.
So, but when we say a Christian nation, or when people reference a Christian nation, you don't think that they have problems with having, say, a Muslim president, for example, or for implementing laws that
I don't have any idea how this has to do with same-sex marriage.
Well, it has to do with the separation of church and state, which has to do with same-sex marriage, I think, a little bit.
I think we should focus on the questions regarding same-sex marriage. I don't know that anything that you're bringing up is anything I've ever said.
Okay, so a number of your speakers, and this is a question from the reader, a number of your speakers throughout the tour, Brad Brandon, Chuck Darrell, Father Becker, have expressed views that gay people are perverted, have compared them to pedophiles, has suggested that they are diseased or unfit parents in their speeches. Do you agree with those views?
No, what I believe is that pastors and religious leaders need to be able to speak up for traditional Christian sexual morality. And they have the right to do that, they have the obligation to do that. And it's not a secret that traditional Christian sexual morality includes not accepting homosexual acts as the same as what the Bible dictates about sexual morality. That's no secret, they have the right to do that. Now, as far as any comparison, no, I don't accept comparisons that would degrade homosexuals as persons. But the fact is that this is what the Catholic Church believes, that this is what evangelicals believe, this is what Orthodox Jews believe. I mean, this is traditional sexual morality. And the idea that somehow that's also off limits for people to speak about it, I think is wrong. Our focus, and the National Organization for Marriage has made this clear repeatedly, our focus is that we need and must protect marriage as this singular institution, this unique institution that brings together the two great halves of humanity and connects them with any children that they might bear, and connects them in love. So we'll continue to do that.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. So I'm just curious, I really want to get the answer to this question. Do you, Brian Brown, believe that gay people are perverted?
Do I believe gay? No. I mean, I don't accept, again, I'm a Catholic. I believe what the Catholic Church teaches about about sexual morality. As far as labeling people names, of course not.
Do you think that homosexuals have a higher propensity to be pedophiles?
Well, I don't know the research on that, and I wouldn't get into something that I'm not very familiar with. I think that making these sorts of comparisons gets away from the central question, which is there something unique and special about men and women coming together in marriage? Is there something different about that union and any other type of union? And that's what we believe. Pastors, priests, rabbis, they can speak about their beliefs openly. That's their right. But again, the focus for the National Organization for Marriage is on protecting this unique institution.
Do you think that homosexuals are more likely to contract diseases because of their sexual preferences?
Again, I'm not an expert on any of these questions. I think that there's plenty of research out there suggesting that talks about homosexual acts and the repercussions of that lifestyle, and you can look that up. Again, that's not our focus. Our focus is not on the homosexuality.
Things that the speakers at
your rally of course they can say it. No, they aren't.
Aren't they not your focus if the speakers at your rally?
Well, the speakers have said many things, and we support their right to stand up and speak for what they believe. Our focus is on protecting marriage as the union of a man and a woman.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.